Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Newcastle Crew, a podcast dedicated to the NBC show Constantine here on the Southgate Media Group's network of podcasts. I am Lilith, and joining me this week are, once again,
Carolee, aka another one known as Boston Red Vines, and my husband Rick, Mr. Boston Red Vines.
Hello.
Poor, long-suffering Rick. Up for discussion this week is episode 105 of Danse Vaudou. It was written by Christine Boland and John Bedham. And I think this is a good place to be. I like this episode. I was invested in this episode.
I liked it too. I liked the action. A lot more action in this episode. And a lot more, everything was connected. That's what I liked.
Well, I felt that as soon as it opened up in New Orleans, we were good.
Yeah.
New Orleans.
Great city.
And great for the supernatural, too. Whether you're a fan of vampires in the Anne Rice situation, or just, the home of voodoo and stuff like that, and just great history, great food, great music. It like, no other city feels like New Orleans in the whole world.
Right.
No, it's true, and it was, I forgot, I think it was, I think it was John who said, I think it was Constantine who said, this is when he was first talking to the detective, Jim Corrigan. And he says, this is not your run-of-the-mill New Orleans street crime. And I was thinking, well, it kind of is. Because there is so much magical myth around the city.
I don't know. This episode just had a totally different feel. And I mean that in a good way for once. I was really pleased as punch with this episode. As well as this episode's performance. It had 85% retention rate from Grimm, which in some cases, depending on who you talk to, is actually kind of important with your lead-out performance. We had a rise in the ratings and total viewers. So it was a good week for Constantine. It built upon last week's growth, and it's a pity about the news. Would you like to talk about the news that we got?
I found out about Constantine, and I don't know what this means, because some shows are slated for 13 episodes, some are slated for 13 episodes, but then they say, okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to give them another 13 next year. My news is Constantine production halted by NBC. NBC has decided to halt production on Friday night's Constantine, capping the series at its initial order of 13 episodes. The network says the show is not canceled and could come back next season, but its ratings don't make a hugely compelling case. Constantine, like you said, is averaging 4.5 million viewers and a 1.4 rating among adults 18 to 49 at 10 p.m., coming out of Grimm's 6.3 million and 1.8 rating. NBC has been struggling to find a companion for Grimm on the evening.
I don't even know what NBC wants from a show on Friday at 10 p.m. I mean, I know the affiliates need a certain rate to lead into their news programming, but, the expectations have been so low for, the last 6 years? I don't even remember the last time there was a good show on Friday night on NBC at 10 o'clock. I literally can't remember.
Honestly, I can't either.
I remember when Grimm Premiere was premiered on a Friday night like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever it was. I hadn't remembered anything being on NBC on a Friday ever.
A friend of ours, she's a very big fan of Grimm. Was Grimm always on Friday night?
They moved it around for like in the spring, and because of like the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics and stuff, they had moved it around a little bit. But for the most part, Grimm has always consistently been on a Friday, and it does pretty well. But that's the 9 o'clock slot. Like, I know me personally, I leave for the bar at 10 o'clock to get there by 11:30. So I don't know what they were expecting out of Constantine. I think a 1.4 on a Friday night at 10 o'clock is amazing, and it's the best they're ever gonna get. So, but I always thought that they were gonna have 13 episodes because Hannibal has 13 episodes, and it comes back, you know, the winter break is like right around the corner. I don't know if they're just trying to stir up a passionate fan base and get better ratings. I honestly don't know the point of this story.
Did they say that Hannibal was coming back?
Oh yeah. It's a critical darling, and that's something that doesn't come too often for NBC. And like the article said, it does have a very low cost production model, which is a very huge plus.
This quote unquote news that I read, it was just kind of out there. Okay, we've always planned for 13 episodes of Constantine, but we have halted production. What's the point of telling us that?
The point of telling you that is that there's media and someone has to say something.
Yeah, it was a slow news day is what I think.
Honestly, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. There's so much access to everything nowadays that someone can get out there and sit there and say, you're not going to believe this, but, we found out the type of cigarettes that Constantine smokes and everything else.
The last thing that I guess I'm going to put a pin in this point is that it did spark a Save Constantine campaign. Literally, by the time I got home, the Save the Constantine hashtag was like trending. So I was just like, whoa.
You guys are both right in the fact that I think this is kind of a show that's going to have a very loyal, the people who do like it are going to be connected to it and they're going to be very loyal. And maybe, so they can always count on the type of ratings that they're going to have. And there's, like you said, Lilith, there's never been a great rating on Friday night at 10 o'clock.
It's a death slot.
Yeah, and so it's done pretty well comparatively. And I think maybe, if you give it some time and word of mouth and other things, and who knows?
Yeah, I definitely think that this was to stir up the fan base and get people talking about Constantine, because a lot of the reviewers are like, it's an okay show, you should definitely check it out if you haven't while you can. So, I don't know, this is all suspicious to me. But let's talk about the synopsis.
Constantine's surprisingly in-depth knowledge of a series of crimes in New Orleans gets the attention of Detective Jim Corrigan. Constantine joins forces with Papa Midnight after a voodoo ritual that allows people to talk to the dead takes a turn.
It floored me that we got Jim Corrigan so early.
Okay, you guys know who he is. I don't.
He's going to be the Spectre eventually.
Okay, and I'm going to hold off on that question. How, because it's kind of how the episode closed, so I'm going to...
Yeah, we can hold off. But yeah, just for you guys to know, it's a very huge comic book fangirl squee of the night situation. But I was a little disappointed with the actor. No offense to Emmett Scanlon. He really didn't come across as the Jim Corrigan that I know from the comic books. And it kind of kills me because Matt Ryan is such a very good physical representation of what John Constantine looks like.
So this detective, he just doesn't fit your image?
It just didn't work for me.
Okay.
I don't know how everybody else feels about that. How about you, Rick?
Yeah, he wasn't quite the grizzled type of person that I thought maybe he would be. But on the other hand, I really love the Spectre. So, I mean, if he actually is going to come in at later episodes, that's going to be...
He's coming back for the season finale. I just heard that news on Tumblr 20 minutes ago.
Oh, there you go.
Well, now, if he's coming back with the season finale, then maybe he'll get a spin-off.
No. There were talks of Zatanna and Swamp Thing making their presence known, but that's only if we get a season 2.
Exactly.
Like, they have a lot of plans for this show, but you can't make plans when you have a show on NBC at 10 p.m. You just can't do it.
I don't trust NBC.
I don't understand why they don't move Grimm to 8 o'clock, move Constantine to 9, and then put that stupid news show they have, whatever it is. It used to be To Catch a Predator, but whatever the heck it is right now, move that to 10 o'clock. Like, I just don't understand. Yeah, it's just weird. I don't know why they don't just flip stuff around to make, if 10 o'clock is not working, just move everything up and put because news shows don't have to make money and they don't need as many ratings.
Right.
So it never made sense for that to be on at 8 o'clock for me personally. It's just a weird situation, but everything else I loved about this episode besides the actor's portrayal of Jim Corrigan. Like, it just didn't line up with the Jim Corrigan that I know and love. I'm very protective of this character, so I probably am overly critical.
See, I didn't know who he was. I kind of got a little hint from somebody over here who he could possibly be. So I had no idea the significance of this character when I first watched the show.
See, you're an actor. Did you enjoy the performance? Did it ring true for you? Like, did he connect with you as a viewer?
Well, I think that he was he did okay actually. If you look at it from, he seemed a little, I don't know. He wasn't as quite forceful as perhaps he should have been. Does that make any sense? He seemed a little bit laid back in the whole deal. That's all. Even
though I didn't know who he's going to become, the character to me still needed a little bit more something.
Okay, good. I don't like to be out on a limb by myself.
I agree with that. They could have made him more. He seemed to bow to Constantine's, and it's probably, of course, a matter of time constraints in writing, but he did seem to bow to Constantine's viewpoint kind of quickly. And I know that they were moving the episode along, and I liked the episode as well. But, I think that might have just been a point where they were just doing their best they could to characterize him, and, they didn't quite get there.
Yeah, but I love the way this episode opens, because we're in the old mill house. It's so much like Supernatural. Like, at this point, I want to call it the bunker, but we're at the mill house, and all three of them are together. Like, I was surprised to see Chaz.
Yes.
Chaz was around a bit. He had a good run in this one.
Oh yeah, it's about time. But like, they're still teasing us with that resurrection plot point, and I'm like, what if we never get to it?
I have a theory on that one. We'll get to later.
So yeah, I like that we still have like new gadgets, and the map made a return. It was really cool that Constantine kind of forced a connection between the map and Zed, since they didn't have access to Liv anymore. Yeah,
that I like that a lot too. And again, when basically he didn't say anything to her about the zoetrope.
Zoetrope,
and
yes.
She comes over and she looks at it, and he's going. It kind of implies that I was just looking to jog the machine. And she says something like the map. He goes, well, maybe. But, kind of implying that it was her that he was trying to unblock. So, and
this was just before we saw him what? Smoking.
Yes.
Yeah, one of several times, by the way.
And our new hashtag I found, it's hashtag Constantine Cigarette Watch.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
No, we're getting a little detailed there.
But no. I found it somewhere. So obviously, we're not the only ones that are looking for his, his nicotine fix.
No, but I like that. You know what I also liked is I like when Constantine in that opening scene there, when they're in at home base or however you want to call it, Lilith. When he sits there and he goes, and that's how Chaz has become such a good cook. And he goes, yeah, I can tell by all the burns, metaphorically speaking. I like that because obviously he heals. So
exactly.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, team meeting. I like that feeling. Like, they haven't felt like a team, and this was like the first time that they actually felt like a team to me.
Yeah, I agree. I do.
I didn't know what to expect when there was like they were like, I mean, do they just like sit around and just wait for cases? Like, I don't understand, because like all the blood looked really dry.
That's what I was thinking. The blood was dry. Zed she wasn't feeling anything. They bring out the zoetrope from Queen Victoria's time, I believe.
Yeah.
And she actually fell into the trance, and then one drop of blood became wet, and obviously it was New Orleans.
Right, she falls into the trance. She sees Corrigan as a young man learning how to shoot a gun.
From his mother. Then
she comes back, and then there's the implication. Then the map has the actual wet blood on it, which is New Orleans. And that's when Constantine kind of says, she goes, oh, were you trying to, jog, because the map or something, she was trying to, are you trying to jog the map? And he goes, well, maybe that or something else. And I think, he was obviously trying to mess with her, which is why he was putting the zoetrope together, so that maybe she could go into some type of trance and begin to actually connect with the map again. But, so I think, again, that's just showing a little bit of his manipulation, but always seemingly for a good end in means.
Okay, quick question. So we see Chaz's taxi. So did they drive his taxi to New Orleans from Atlanta? Is that what they're telling me?
Yes. They would have to be. I thought about that too.
They didn't mention it, then all of a sudden the taxi shows up, and I'm like, okay.
I didn't catch that.
That's not suspicious at all. Oh, that taxi. They're going to have to explain that taxi eventually, too.
Yeah, because that would be an uncomfortable trip in a taxi.
Well, I didn't know where the cold opener was going, where the lady with the scissors kills the lady, and we see Jim taking a leak in the alley, and he's like, don't look at me, I'm a cop. And I'm like, what? What is even going on?
I know. He goes, I could pee in the alley, and he shows him his badge.
Yeah. So
she's
just another. She's like, okay, fine.
I'm out of here.
Right.
But no, unfortunately, the demon got to her first.
I like when she's talking on the cell phone. I was liking that character for all of the 10 seconds she was on screen, but I loved it when she looked at the woman with the mask, Misaki or whatever her name is, and she goes, "Well, that's a choice." I loved that. I'm sorry, it actually made me laugh out loud.
Shout out to Chastity Ballesteros, who played Misaki Ross. She was hot. I love those modeling pictures they showed of her.
Yeah. Right. And it goes to show you how great the makeup artists really are on TV, in Hollywood in general.
I mean, this episode also took a step back from, the gore that they had a little trend going on for a while, and I think it kind of served a purpose. I like ghost stories as opposed to demon stories, but this also connected to the myth arc, and you could kind of see it. It's like, okay, these ghosts are getting stronger, and it stands to reason because they mention it every single episode of The Rising Darkness. But I was interested to see how that was going to play out in the story.
No, I think it played out really well as far as the way they wrote that, because I liked very much the way the Papa Midnight realized he had no intention of raising the dead, and when when he realizes that what he was doing is basically a thing so that they could speak to the dead as a medium, and it was having other consequences. I thought that was great. It also that was kind of the impetus to show the extremely uneasy alliance between Constantine and Midnight.
Yeah. They had to, though, because when he first appears, it was just very out of character. And this episode kind of showcases what that quote unquote frenemy relationship is like between them in the comic books.
Yeah. Okay.
But I was thrown for a loop that we had two ghosts on the loose, and I wasn't sure how they were going to connect it. I was like, okay. And it was interesting.
It happens to be 3 at the very end. But one of my favorite parts is when they do arrive and they do meet Detective Corrigan, and he's just like, I'm not so sure about you guys, but they've deemed me crazy, so I'm kind of off duty, I suppose. I don't know. So they go to the alleyway, and I just have to say, I absolutely love John Constantine's Eye Spirit smartwatch.
I know.
I do. I was like, what is he it's like a smartwatch. It's so cool. I love it.
No, and then Chaz had it for the rest of the episode. Mm-hmm. He was walking around with it.
What was it? Blue means they were there. Green meant they were near. And red means
run.
Run.
Yeah, I think it's about right. Yeah, it was that was good. That again, that whole Chaz's hunting down of Misaki was like absolutely altogether too much fun.
I have a lot to say about that. I love that part. I did. They check into a hotel. It looks like a bit of flirtation.
A bit. She threw herself at him.
And I don't know if he totally dissed her because Rick and I have totally different opinions on what he said.
Constantine likes to... He's one of those guys who likes to insult a girl to lower her self-esteem to make her right for the picking. Like, to me, that's the kind of guy that Constantine is.
I was right. Because he goes, I respect the people I'm with. And she said something about, well, you don't respect me yet.
No. It was just opposite. He says, because they got 2 rooms, she says, oh, so you respect me.
He says, no, sorry, love, we should keep it professional.
Yeah, like you said, let's keep it professional. Then she said, so you respect
He
me.
disses her, okay, that's all.
I just, no, sorry. I don't think he necessarily. I think what he was trying to do was just get a little information from her.
Maybe, but we get some more information about her at the end of the story.
Yeah, I did enjoy that little banter. And it is weird that, like, Chaz likes to stay at hotel chains. Like, ew, no. No La Quintas, no Motel 6s. Although, when I have to pay for my stuff for work, it is totally Motel 6. Like, not even gonna lie.
If they have the funds, I would stay definitely at a place like John and Zed, but I thought they had the funds.
I thought it was gonna be fake money he handed the lady. I couldn't believe he actually paid real cash.
That is.
See, I thought she had a thing for Constantine.
She does! Everybody has a thing for Constantine. The mail clerk lady, like, she gave them complimentary champagne. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
And Zed doesn't like champagne.
I knew there was something I didn't like about that lady. Who doesn't like champagne? Put it with orange juice, you got a mimosa. Put it with peach puree, you got a Bellini. What's not to like?
Right? Oh, you're so right.
That's I can't argue with either one of them.
So that's interesting, but do you think that's true? Or was she just saying that to be weird?
That I didn't think about. Gosh.
Well, we don't really know. I think what she was making a point of is that, he was trying to say, okay, I don't, sleep with people that I don't know too much about. I'd like to know more about them. And then he asked her, what are you running from and everything else. And then she comes up with the champagne and she says, no, thank you. I don't like champagne. And then she looks at him and says, well, now you know something about it.
Who knows what's dead, but
The point of the writing was for her to be sly and tell him, now you know something about me. She was basically like an even banter.
But the thing about Zed is, how the hell old is this lady?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I can't. That's actually a really good point.
Okay, y'all have lost me already.
Because she's a runaway. It made it seem like she was a runaway.
I mean, she is a runaway. And one of the points is, and I was going to bring this up also later, Lilith, but since we're talking about it, but when Corrigan says to her, he goes, when you ran away from and he pauses and he goes, family. So obviously there's something there. And if I remember correctly, didn't she consider like one of those groups, like her family, like the God's Warriors or something?
Yeah, that you're exactly
so
right.
I'm thinking that it was like more of a cult group that she ran away from, and that's what he was like saying. But I'm not sure exactly. I've never really thought about her.
I'm really glad that they addressed the fact that she changed her name because in the comic books, obviously it's Mary, and it's been eating away at my soul. So I'm glad that they kind of gave us that little breadcrumb. They keep Zed so mysterious that it's very hard to like connect with her for me. And her visions are getting really, and I think this is intentional, by the way. Like, they remember how pretty and light and airy they used to be? And now they're getting kind of progressively darker in tone and the filters and stuff.
And getting intense. I mean, she looks into the elevator and Constantine actually has to pull her out. I don't know if anything would have happened to her, but she witnesses the car accident.
Yeah. I actually like that scene. That scene was
yes.
When she opened, the elevator opens up, she steps into it, and suddenly she's out there on the road where the accident's about to occur. and they call it in before it happens, which is probably a strategic mistake.
Yes, we're talking about when Philip, whom is a new character, he is hitchhiking. Somebody picks him up. He wants to go to New Orleans. He just is really wanting to go to New Orleans. And they asked, what, 2 or 3, I don't remember the man who picked him up.
The man who picked him up, this is a creepy scene.
He's kind of pervy, I'm sorry.
He's a greasy.
Not kind of, he is. He grabs his thigh and goes, let's get you warmed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he asks him, he goes, so who's waiting for you in the city? Nope.
Yeah, he was probably a serial killer, son.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I hate to say it, but that guy probably deserved to die. I don't know if we want to
I think that was the point of the scene, so we weren't just like, oh my God, Philip just killed somebody. No, that was a creeper. Definitely.
I think you're right, too. They kind of had to write him as an evil.
Right, because, I mean, he was talking to Philip, and all of a sudden he disappears, and then he looks up. Philip's right in front of him, already bloodied. He swerves, runs into the tree that Zed had seen in the elevator, and
just falls out and pretty much
he dies in the ambulance.
Yeah, and
right.
that's when basically the yellow cab comes chugging up the road, and Zed makes her move and says, "Let me take care of this." And she comes up and
she was good.
Hysterical. She acts hysterical because she said, "It's my sister," I think it was.
Yes.
Or something. Yeah.
She was good.
Like, they could have got away with it had Jim not shown up, too. Like, that's the funny thing of it all, is that he was just the foil.
Right.
Yeah.
He throws Constantine in the back of the car. I'm like, but Constantine can pick handcuffs easily. And, of course, they show me that scene later. But I'm just literally like, we're not going to knock him out and steal the car. Like, really? What are we even doing with Constantine at this point now?
I guess Constantine probably wanted to get Corrigan in his comfort zone, make him look through the files and sit there and say, look, I told you there were other murders with, Shears, and, all these things can't be coincidences. And
we'll look through the reports, of course. Yeah. Right.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I think that's, that worked out because that gets Corrigan solidly on their side.
Well,
it was so weird how just so gung-ho he turned into. Like, it was almost like he had already encountered something like this before. And it was just like, this was the last piece that made it click. Because he just jumped on their bandwagon so quickly.
I think they did write Corrigan as if he was on his last rational legs, saying, no, none of this can really be true, because he probably had experienced something else previous to it, because it seemed like he had, because finally he said, okay, this is it. It obviously does exist, and here's, reinforcement and proof of what's going on. So, because he did like move over to them pretty quickly.
I mean, not that I minded, because obviously we only have like 42 minutes to tell a story. But
exactly.
I don't know, like, I just feel like he should have been more grizzled, more rumpled, like,
His entire police force already deemed him crazy, so...
So he's obviously had, well, yeah. And he was obviously very, very shaken by what happened in the alley.
Right.
Point blank range, and his trained police officer, he knew he hit her.
Right.
And he also knew that there were no marks on the walls, just like Constantine and Chaz said, pointed out. And then I did like that scene, though, when they were in the alley, and I guess I'm probably going to regress a little here, but when they were in the alley and Zed looks up at him and says, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That's the advice his mom was giving to him when she was teaching him to shoot.
Oh, and that's how he knew.
That was his first clue that something was up. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's when he finally started to give in. Then they get a little bit of backstory on Constantine's advice. Just go look up the reports, and sure enough, there were 2 incidences with the shears. People had been murdered with shears. There were 3, I believe, with car accidents with the tree. They're trying to put something together. What's connecting these 3? Well, I didn't mention the other one, but
which they kind of do when Corrigan figures it out. He goes, since Masaki's been dead for 5 years and Philip's been dead for 3, why are they suddenly why are they suddenly here now? Mm-hmm. And then he says, well, because something obviously at this point in time brought them both out. And so now we need to look for that common denominator. And it's really cool for me, and this is one of my favorite scenes right after this one, because they cut to Chaz, and Chaz is walking around New Orleans, and he encounters Misaki in the alley. She completely kicks his butt.
Well, he didn't ask her a question, you know.
He didn't know. He didn't have a chance.
Let's just fast forward a little bit where we get kind of to the Papa Midnight portion. Well, no, not the Papa Midnight portion, but Constantine goes to talk to the girl that sliced up Misaki's face.
I think that's where everything comes together.
We find out that they've all gone to Papa
Midnight.
Right. to talk.
And when we find
to
that
the
out,
spirits.
This is actually a nice piece, I think, of work, a nice piece of directing. If you remember when we find that out, we have John talking to Fraser, who's the model who cut up Misaki's face, and we have Zed talking to the grandmother Karlberg, right? And they overlap the scenes in an audio way. So they go back and forth and they tell the tale between the two witnesses. And that I thought they did a really good job editing that, and I thought that was really great. And then when we come out on the other side of that scene, we're basically directly understanding that it's Papa Midnight, and then the episode really takes off.
Oh, yeah. It's just something about when Papa Midnight shows up, the episode always just takes off, you know? I enjoyed that. I was just like, yeah, finally. Because I kept saying, remember, he's in so many episodes. We got to start seeing him more and more. And finally.
And then Constantine interrupts.
I liked the ritual that they were doing. I kind of wanted to see it to completion. It's almost like he cut them off a little bit, but it still worked.
First see Madeline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Deborah Owens.
Right.
Yeah. And that was fun. And all I could think of was when Papa Midnight, obviously, how dare you and everything else, and John being his usual defiant self, Constantine being his usual defiant self. And then Papa Midnight blows the dust out of his hand. And I went, John, he cut you again.
Yeah, Constantine, I don't know. He's so cocky to the point that, like, it's his detriment at times, especially with Papa Midnight, because Papa Midnight has no time for his game.
And you know what I like that, and again, they do this in the comic book, so it's like when someone asks, and they do this kind of often, when Constantine enters the scene, they'll ask, who are you? And instead of saying, I'm John Constantine, he'll say, I'm the one who's come to save your...
Yeah.
He never actually gives his name.
Huh.
Because when Jim Corrigan walks up to me, he goes, who are you? He goes, well, I'm the one who's come to tell you exactly what's going on here, or whatever it is. And then it takes him a while to get to know him, but he always has that cocky first standoffish remark.
So Papa Midnight is like, what the heck? I'm like, I like this about Papa Midnight, that sure, they paid him, but he didn't mean for this to happen.
He wanted the spirit to speak through him. He didn't want the spirit to actually come back to Earth. And that's what's happening to all three.
They throw him in the trunk. It's just classic Constantine.
Oh, then that's where I have my favorite quote, but I'll leave that to the end.
Yeah,
So.
that is his stuck. That's it. No, his stuck in the trunk, and Papa Midnight goes in and he hangs out with Madeline, and he realizes that her husband's there with her. And he knows that something's wrong. And a scene I love very much is when he gets back in his Mercedes, and he sits there and he goes, there's something wrong with my magic, and there's something wrong with what's going on here. And regardless of how much, and then Constantine, of course, he thinks he has his driver, and Constantine turns around. That's great. That's completely priceless. I mean, come on, that was a perfect thing. And then they basically cut their deal.
I do like the fact that Papa Midnight, he said there is something wrong with my magic.
Yeah, that's really cool.
The fact that he acknowledged that.
And that's the beginning, that's sort of the beginning of their uneasy alliance, and they make their deal. And then I think Papa Midnight, the next shot is basically, I think Zed's on the road and she meets Corrigan, and they make their deal, not necessarily a deal, they just make their plan to say, look, instead of you just hanging out, let's go try and pick up the kid ourselves.
Yeah, they keep picking up Philip just so nobody else would get hurt.
Which is a relatively good plan.
Mm-hmm.
But the cool thing is, I love it with Papa Midnight is the first time he's going to talk to his sister.
I had no idea that was his sister. That freaked me out. And what happened? What did he do? You guys might know.
He's in a very similar situation to Constantine, actually. is the way they made it.
And that kind of makes them open to Constantine's suggestion of a deal when they're in the car. It's just that I think the first time we see his sister is kind of cool.
What do you think, Lila?
It was weird and creepy, and that's always a plus for me.
That'll work.
I do like that connection that they both have something very tragically similar.
Yes, indeed.
I like those parallels. His direct hotline to hell must be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great line. I guess leads us to, they're forming their plan, and we go through again, a couple of switch cuts to Zed and Corrigan out on the road meeting Philip, which I think was less interesting, but I understand what was going on. But I think the scenes between Constantine and Papa Midnight were just so good this time around.
And so was Chaz and Masaki.
God.
Come on, that was one of the great little subtexts.
Which one? The first meeting?
All of them, actually. But the last one was great, where he starts asking her questions and she can't stab him.
That was a great scene.
I think that was more interesting than the Philip thing, but I think the Philip thing was more fulfilling for Zed, which was the point of it.
Yes, I think that they needed to put Zed and Corrigan together for a little bit to see what was happening, and she's working independently in a way.
Exactly, which is important for any character, because Chaz and Zed and Manny have all been on the back burner, and it's okay for me because Constantine is what I showed up for, and this was a character-driven episode.
No, I like this. I think I've liked this one the best.
Yeah.
So far.
Because that's what I like. I like a character-driven show, and this is the highlight of all the episodes by far, because it connects to the mythology. It's just like, yes, you guys are getting it now. We got the ball rolling.
Yeah, the last two I think definitely have
Hopefully.
Really. Yeah, they have. They've been much better than the first couple were. I really loved it when I think the thing really got rolling. The episode really, it was good all the way through, but I loved it when Constantine and Papa were in the mausoleum there, and they're stealing their first body on their plan.
Oh.
And he has the crowbar and he's trying to pull it out, and that's basically when they're talking, accusing each other of having screwed up in the past, and they're both carrying burdens, and then Constantine goes, screw it, I'm just going to break this thing, and he just slams it right through the concrete and pulls it out.
I really enjoyed Papa Midnight calling John Constantine out on his crap, though, because salting and burning a body really is just like the lowest thing. I know it's a necessity, but wow. He was so cavalier.
For me, just seeing and understanding this the first time, I really did like the voodoo between them going back and forth with the Creole and the, I don't know what.
Fake Latin.
Okay. And going back and forth, and it was just so intense. But then at the very end, it's like
it didn't work.
It didn't work.
And I like that they incorporated the theme of guilt. Like that was their theme, and it was a very clever way to use it, and then tie it to the rising darkness. Like it just worked all the way around.
It did.
Very relatable. The power of guilt.
Yeah, that was, from the beginning to the end, and they needed the three witnesses, or however you want to say it, the three people themselves who had the overwhelming guilt that they couldn't get rid of, to be there to say, yes, you can do this, in order for the spell to work. So that was great. But when they were there stealing their first body, that's when they had that great argument. It's like when he calls them the jackass of all trades and master of none. Midnight calls Constantine that. And then like later on at one point he calls him
Magpie of Magic.
Yeah, you got them all. The Magpie of Magic and the Thief of Traditions. Yeah.
And it's really true in that in the comic books they kind of allude to that, and it also has a lot to do with why he often says, I should really change Master of the Dark Arts to Petty Dabbler.
He's more of a dilettante than an expert.
But he still hasn't changed his cards.
It's just an ongoing joke, I guess.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly when Corrigan went
course.
Master of the Dark Arts. Okay.
It's a little self-deprecating humor that's classic Constantine. He uses it to kind of disarm people around him because he's a con man at the heart of things.
Because of his ego, or
he's arrogant, egotistical, all of that. But it's still like he's still really relatable. Like I don't know how it's possible because he's really an awful person if you like just write it down on paper. But like you read his stories, and I think Matt Ryan has definitely captured that. Like
okay, so that's when they were kind of trying to figure out why the voodoo didn't work. Like Rick said, they had to get the people who felt very guilty. They had to get them within the voodoo ritual, and it actually worked.
I like that. Just at the end of the day, Papa Midnight's like, "Get out of my way! I'm gonna do this." It was great. It scared me. I'm like, is he gonna get possessed? Like the way that when he fell down and stuff at the end of the ritual. But I want to say that the third ghost was actually the creepiest because he was literally sucking the life out of his wife.
Do you think that he was doing that, or do you think she was just
allowing
the cancer to come to her?
I think she knew she was getting sick because of him, but she didn't care because of her guilt, and it was just nice to be back with him. But I definitely, because he looked healthy as she was kind of dwindling away.
Oh, absolutely.
And they kind of make a mention of that when he gets back in the car. He's like, I could feel it, I could see it, you know?
Yeah, when you think about that, if there's no one intervenes, we have Misaki running around killing people with shears.
Yeah.
We have Philip out on the road basically distracting them and running him off into a tree. But then we have this guy who's passing on a sickness where people just wither away slowly.
But would she have been his only victim? Or, like, how would that have worked? Like, I don't know. But I think that was the scariest thing because she was okay with it.
Yeah, I agree.
But would it have been with his wife only?
Well, he would have had to have moved on if he'd stayed alive, just like Philip went on to another person, and so did Misaki. He would. I'm assuming that's
the thing about Misaki. She never went after the girl that did it to her.
No, she actually didn't. That's true. She. And I often wonder about that. And I don't have a lot of. For some reason, there wasn't a lot of empathy built up for Fraser. I don't think she should have gotten out in 4 years of good behavior for having done something like that to someone.
I totally agree.
I'm not. Yeah,
totally agree.
She seemed a little bit out of place with Grandma Karlberg and Madeline. She seemed a little bit out of place. It didn't, and I understand you could regret and act like, okay, you missed your husband's death because you couldn't be there. You didn't know exactly the time he was going to die. You didn't know he was sick. Understood. You could really hold that guilt. And that's an innocent guilt in a lot of ways. And you can also hold the innocent guilt of sitting there and saying, look, I'm going to give you some tough love. All right? If you're not going to take advantage of the things that I'm giving you, I'm not going to give them to you anymore if you're not doing the right thing with them. And then he goes out and he dies on the road. Again, innocent guilt. But this woman went out and attacked this girl. And I know she does say I had a mental disorder.
I thought that was really cheap, too, by the way.
Thank you.
That was the one. I was like going...
I think we all agree the same thing. I just really... That woman deserved way more than 4 years in prison. And I know she feels guilty, but she not only took her, fellow models' livelihood from her, she also made that woman commit suicide.
Yeah, it was the only false note that I had in this episode, especially. Even the actress didn't play it all that well. She sat there and she goes, every time I think of her, I just feel guilty.
Well, yeah, you should.
Yeah.
It's like somebody wanting a pat on the back for taking out the trash. I was like, what, you're going to leave it in your house and let it stink? Of course you should take out the trash.
Right, exactly. Okay, but that was... I thought, again, overall, it was a great ending, and...
well, the ending was getting all the people who felt guilty together and having another voodoo.
Yeah, having their permission to let the spirits go back.
Right. Yeah. And they all did, in fact, disappear. Papa Midnight did, in fact, say to John Constantine, okay, maybe we should start working together.
I like that. But I think that I am a little annoyed, actually, that they got rid of the ending and closing monologues. It makes Constantine a little more accessible for me personally. And it's just a shame that they stopped it because I kind of miss it.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't actually overtly notice that, but you're right. I do too, because to me it always gives a sense of the comic book. So yeah, I kind of missed that a little bit too, because it's like you'd like to see sort of Constantine as he walks off from that particular episode in his life, comments upon it. After them having come to their, I guess, happy conclusion to the point where hopefully guilt has been assuaged and the spirits have disappeared and the dead have gone back to a peaceful resting place. That last scene with Constantine and Papa Midnight was great when he hands him the scotch, I think it is, and he goes, "Our truce is over at the bottom of that glass, so sip cautiously." I love that line. That was another great line. I mean, I think they just set up the tension between the two of them quite well, and they set up their characters quite well. As you were saying, this was like a episode that had a lot to do with characterization.
The most interesting scene for me is the glimpse that Zed gets of Jim Corrigan in his little green mist spiral thingy.
Yes.
That's what you guys, you guys thought. I was like, what? And it's some specter of sorts, and I have no clue. So I'm excited to see about that.
I really like that exchange too. I think that was one of the best exchanges in the movie, in the episode. Because because one, we're finding out about Zed's past. We're finding out we're digging a little bit into the mystery of it.
I want to know more.
And we're kind of introducing a new character, at least a new character to the TV series.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just jump into Easter egg since we're right here. The Spectre is a fictional character, of course. He's a superhero who just is a DC comic book character. He's really old. What was it? 1940, I think he premiered in More Fun Comics number 51. And now the interesting thing about this episode that I caught my eye is that they actually gave credit to Jerry Siegel for creating him. And I guess they kind of had to after that huge long battle they had about the Superman, how to credit Superman to them. So I thought that was really interesting that there was just they actually put that in there in the credits, in the opening credits if you watch it. The Spectre, man, it's long and complicated. We've had Hal Jordan be the spirit of redemption and Christmas Allen, and it's a long sordid history, but it's really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, when he was part of the Justice Society or Justice League of America, I can't remember, there was this storyline where he could expand himself and two worlds were gonna crash together, and he basically put his hands on one and his feet on the other and kept them apart. I mean,
really?
He's almost omniscient. I mean, he's like a notch below God.
This is weird though, because the modern version is John Ostrander or whatever. So I found it really odd that we were doing this one. I'm just like, okay, we're doing it. Because, I mean, they're so dedicated to the New 52 and all of that stuff that, in every single show with the exception of Gotham, obviously, that I was just really surprised that we were going Jim Corrigan. I was just like, okay, I like that. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
That was a total surprise to me.
Oh, yeah?
So, the Spectre?
The visuals of it, when she saw him all bloody and stuff?
Well, when I saw him all bloody, and there was this green kind of glow, I'm like, what's up with that?
Yeah,
and
I didn't mention it.
He didn't say
Jim Corrigan was.
He didn't
or anything about that. So when she saw that at the end, she went, "What the?"
Well, that's the allusion to how he dies, right? When he's all bloody and all the bullet wounds and all that stuff that we see, and then the green glow is an allusion to the Spectre who he becomes.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
He gets shot dead, and then that green glow is the Spectre.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Spectre was the biggest Easter egg. We got Zed's backstory. It's kind of alluding to her cult. Well, then let's get to the awards. Grade.
I'll give it a A-.
Yeah, I agree. It's much better than the ones we've seen. I don't remember my last grade, but I'd give it a B+.
Okay, I'm always the tough love person. I gave it a B-. I don't give A's very often unless it's The Flash. What was your guys' favorite scene of the night?
I like Chaz and Misaki. It just cracked me up when he finally got it and started asking her questions.
I like when he finally said, "Can you believe how long it's taking me to figure out to ask you questions?"
What about you, Rick?
My scene of the night, I loved the scene of the night when they were just robbing the grave. When they broke in the mausoleum and they did that in Papa Midnight's going, "No, this is wrong. There's just something unholy about this." And Constantine's just getting frustrated, and he just slams the crowbar directly through the concrete, and they just pours his little stuff over the corpse, and then he says that obviously kind of line. He says, "Speaking of dead weight, help me out." I'm sorry. I really like that scene.
That's a really cool scene. My scene too is a scene between Papa Midnight and Constantine, but it's at the end where they're drinking scotch. Like, I don't know. That's just a heck of a way to wrap up a case for me. I was just like, can we just do this every week? I really enjoy those two together a lot.
What's the name of the actor who plays Papa Midnight? Because I don't know.
His name is Michael James Shaw.
Okay, because I think he did an absolutely spectacular job in this one. Especially the first time when he was just being the medium, and that's all it was supposed to be, and he was with Madeline, and he jumps out when the spirit of her husband, basically comes into him, and then when they're doing the whole thing with John Constantine at the end, the ritual of the Danse Vaudou, it was like voodoo. It was just that he was really good. He did a really good job. I thought he really carried that role well.
Yeah, I really am enjoying Michael James Shaw as Papa Midnight. Like I said, they nail the casting in some instances, and so when they make a casting choice and it's not quite as up to snuff as it could be, it just hurts my soul because they've done such a great job with these other kids.
Right, all around, yeah, for the most part.
But, either people have chemistry or they don't, and I understand that. All right, line of the night, people. This is what the people pay the money for. Let's see if Carol Lee's going to be a saucy little minx tonight.
You think I might? If nothing, would you please turn down the reggae music? The bloody reggae music. I love Jamaica and I love reggae music. So when he was telling the driver, please turn down, if nothing else, please turn down the bloody reggae music.
That was when he was in the trunk, right?
Yes, that was when he was in the trunk.
What about you, Rick? What do you got?
Well, I'm going to have to stick with, I don't want to steal yours.
That's okay.
But I'm going to have to steal with Jackass of all trades, Master of none. I just think I loved that, especially since it was like, during a time when him and Papa Midnight were definitely arguing with each other, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah, I too like that line a lot, but I think I like the point. I like the fact that the next time that he tells Constantine off, where he calls him a magpie of magic and a thief of tradition, because like I was saying earlier, that is very much Constantine's thing, but he's like, instead of being ashamed of it, he's proud of it.
That's true, and that's the one thing about Constantine. He doesn't, he will actually sit there when someone insults him. He'll go, "Bloody well right, mate."
just perfection. Like that's Constantine in a nutshell. And I finally feel like they're getting a real good handle on Constantine. Finally. Most memorable moment.
Most memorable moment. Oh gosh, most memorable scene. Okay, for me, this is the first time that they did the voodoo scene, the ritual, when Papa Midnight and John Constantine, it didn't work, unfortunately, but just the interaction, just Papa Midnight saying something I believe was Creole, and then John Constantine saying something in Lilith.
Probably Latin, or as I like to call it, fake Latin.
And it was just back and forth, and it was just so intense. And was the camera spinning? It seemed like the camera was spinning.
No,
almost.
It was definitely cuts back and forth. I'm not sure if it was a spin shot after the Gaussian sign.
Okay, that was just really cool for me.
Well, I liked the last scene. I liked the last scene when they wrapped it up with, well, it's not the actual last scene. The last scene's with Zed and Corrigan, I think. But when they wrapped it up with the scotch. And I liked the way Papa Midnight looked back over his shoulder and basically warns him that, all your efforts are in vain and someone's going to betray you. And, they are the ones who are going to herald in the darkness. And Yeah.
I think my favorite moment had to be when the paramedics find Chaz and he asked them for a shirt, and the paramedics are just like, "What the hell is going on?"
That was my next one.
That we both loved that one too. We were both considering using that one. I think that's a great one. I remember seeing. I mean, he basically pulled a Wolverine. He just healed right in front of you. All right. In on that topic, because
Rick's his best action was Chaz getting his butt kicked.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, I can't do best action because I like that as well. So I said best reaction was watching the EMTs going, what?
Here's my off-the-wall theory on Chaz right now. He has a picture of, like, Dorian Gray. Somewhere, all the wounds that he incurs, all right, are, like, put upon that particular picture, so he heals by virtue of this sacred talisman he has somewhere, which is maybe a self-portrait or something else. I don't know. Or he's just an absolute, creature from the supernatural beyond, which is probably more likely.
Do we know what we're talking about here?
No, this is a completely original take on the character of Chaz, because Chaz didn't have resurrection powers.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So I have no idea what the
Yeah. So I'm thinking that if something terrible and awful happens to him that would kill him, it immediately transfers to something else that he has, like everything that Dorian Gray did that was wrong or bad or things that happened to him transferred to his portrait, and his portrait aged.
Oh,
he didn't age, right? But he didn't age. And I know that's just like a loose thing, but I was just thinking.
I agree. That's very interesting. I just didn't know if there was something in the comic books.
Character of the night.
Gosh, character of the night. Rick, you want to go first? Because I think I know who I'd like to say, but
it's probably unanimous.
Well,
probably.
I mean, Papa Midnight is Papa Midnight.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the actor did such a good job. He had all the good lines. I mean, he was into the character completely. Oh yeah, he really did. He did a fine job, and again, like I said, he had some great lines.
Yeah, Papa Midnight, hands down. I think it's a little obvious with this one too, but best character interactions.
Yeah, it's going to be
Midnight,
Constantine and Papa Midnight, because the whole, like you said, it was a characterization. A lot of this episode was characterization, and it was around them in the opposing relationship they have and the uneasy alliance they have.
Yes.
And which is, strung out over the comic book in a lot of ways, and I think they really established it quite well.
I like the fact that first, it seemed that they were enemies, and then they became like, oh, well, wait a minute, hold on. I don't think my magic, my voodoo, is working as well or like it used to, and maybe I should listen to you, John. And then they became not necessarily a team, but they became to respect each other.
Okay, so last bit of business before we get to theories, predictions, or questions. Biggest shocker surprise of the night, and I think that's another unanimous thing, is that they addressed the rising darkness through Papa Midnight's sister.
We actually have two. The sister, obviously, and for me, it was seeing the detective's blood and the green, and because I didn't know what he was going to become later on in the comic books.
Which I think is a really cool concept, because if you don't know the comic books, that in fact would be a very shocking concept. On the other hand, if you do, that's something you go, oh, cool.
You just knew that Zed was going to have a vision of him.
I had no idea. I was like, what is this about? And when Rick explained, I'm like, oh, okay, got it. I can see it now. Okay.
Yeah.
I know, we're at theories, predictions, and questions, so.
Theories. Whom is going to betray John? And we have a couple of theories. I was on Twitter, live tweeting during the show. Charles Skaggs said Zed. He didn't offer an explanation, Rick and myself are leaning towards Manny.
Yeah, I agree, but only because I read this interview with Harold Perrineau where he said he didn't like, because Manny is an original character, but he bases his angel on the angels from the comic books in Hellblazer. And like, he was asking the questions like, what does Manny want? And he said he got a sense of Manny wasn't who he said he was. So I'm leaning towards Manny as well. Best plot twist, because Zed would be too obvious. And if it was Chaz, then that means he's got to die. And we just can't have 3 characters on a show, especially one that doesn't show up every episode. Manny. So you want to know about Papa Midnight's sister. Now, fun fact that Sedalia is named after Bob Marley's daughter.
I didn't know that.
A Bob Marley reference?
Yep. Now, she was the sister of Papa Midnight. She was a powerful practitioner of voodoo. He murdered her, and for 10 days performed a powerful spell on her. It kept her from passing, and it stained her soul so she would enter hell. And so he set up a connection with her, which he could channel through her skull. Once she was in hell, she was her brother's slave. She stole their secrets and powers from demons in hell, allowing Midnight to rise to the power in the mortal world.
Whoa, that's casts a whole different look on Midnight there.
Especially.
So he has a lot of nerve pointing the finger at John Constantine, is what I'm saying.
Right, which is why they kind of pointed the finger at each other, and then that one.
Just one little last bit of business, I guess. People always think that I'm crazy when I say random things. Like, I feel like they should have put Constantine on Sci-Fi Channel and paired it with Dominion. Because it's another show that deals with angels and angels being shady and demons and stuff. And so they had a marathon on the Sci-Fi Channel, which I really, what day was it? It was on the 20th, which I really felt helped boost Constantine's rating this past Friday by catching everybody up. Now, Sci-Fi is a channel owned under the NBC Universal family, so it's not like it wouldn't be in the NBC family. That's all. It saw a really good rise in the ratings and grim retention, and I really do think that marathon helped it. But I also think that it would have a lower bar for success on Sci-Fi.
Well, I think it's very encouraging that if they did run the marathon on Sci-Fi, and that it increased the ratings the next day on network. So I think that's encouraging, right. Very much so. And maybe that means you can find an outlet for it in a medium or a place that you don't need to have, or the pressure isn't as large as to have, the ratings that NBC wants.
Yeah, which is unrealistic.
And I don't know what they're thinking they're ever going to find in that spot.
Then let's just get to shameless plugs. What do you got?
You can find me on Boston Red Vines at Twitter, Facebook as Carolee.Crawford. And we have a new Twitter account at Newcastle Crew.
And of course, you can always find us on Facebook under the same name. So be sure to like the page. I swear I'm gonna get around to posting good stuff about it. It's just hard to find good stuff about Constantine, but I'm gonna screen cap and do all that stuff myself in here. So be on the lookout for that, guys. As for me, you guys know you can find me at Lilith Hellfire over on Twitter. My blog is lilithlovestv.blogspot.com. Remember, loves is spelled L-U-V-S. So yeah, that is a wrap on episode 105, Danse Vaudou. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for the new followers.
Thank you.
And if you think we're pretty, don't forget to join us next week when we talk about episode 106.